Dick Cheney's funeral was held on Thursday, November 20th, with Washington's biggest names filling the National Cathedral. But as the crowd gathered, it quickly became clear that some high-profile figures were missing. Let's start with the names everyone immediately looked for: Barack and Michelle Obama. They didn't attend, and that alone had people asking questions. Is it unusual? Kind of. Former first couples often show up for a vice president's funeral, but it's not an official rule. And the Obamas also skipped Vice President Walter Mondale's funeral in 2022. Still, with so many major political figures in the room this time, their absence definitely stood out.
How about this about being related to Dick Cheney? Did you know that? Was it a surprise?
We'd kept it hidden.
But the list of missing names didn't stop there, and some absences were even louder. Notably, President Donald Trump and Vice President J.D. Vance were nowhere near the cathedral. Reports say they weren't invited, which is a major departure from tradition.
I know the president is aware of the former vice president's passing, and as you saw, flags have been lowered to half staff in accordance with statutory law.
Imagine the sitting president and vice president not attending a former VP's funeral. It would normally be unthinkable. But given that Cheney broke Republican ranks and endorsed the Democratic ticket in 2024, many people saw this coming. Let's just say Washington etiquette has been flexible lately. Former President Bill Clinton and former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton also didn't make it due to scheduling conflicts. So, if you were scanning the pews for that whole presidential row, the gaps were definitely noticeable. Inside the cathedral, though, the service itself brought together leaders from both parties, and for some, it was the first time they'd appeared side by side in months. President Joe Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris reunited publicly for the first time since the release of Harris's candid memoir, 107 Days, which detailed the chaos of her 2024 campaign after Biden dropped out of the race. And yes, people clocked that moment immediately. Biden attended with Dr. Jill Biden, while George W. Bush and Laura Bush arrived quietly, but received a warm welcome. Bush delivered a heartfelt eulogy for his former VP, calling him a steady hand, a loyal partner, and someone whose humility matched his abilities. In true Bush fashion, the tribute was both personal and measured, praising Cheney as a leader who lifted the standards of everyone around him.
In our years in office together, on the quiet days and on the hardest ones, he was everything a president should expect in a second in command. In moments of testing, Dick Cheney was the model of concentration, alertness, and composure.
The guest list stretched even further. Supreme Court justices were there, including Chief Justice John Roberts and Justices Brett Kavanaugh and Elena Kagan, along with a long line of cabinet members from different administrations. Speaker Emerita Nancy Pelosi sat alongside Senate Majority Leader John Thune and former Senate Leader Mitch McConnell, reminding everyone that political rivalries tend to soften at moments like these. And while the Obamas weren't present, Barack did share a message shortly after Cheney's death, noting that although they came from very different political traditions, he respected Cheney's lifelong commitment to public service. It was a gracious acknowledgement, and maybe also a hint that not all absences are personal. Michelle Obama's recent choices about which events she attends added another layer of context. Earlier this year, she skipped President Jimmy Carter's funeral, and later Donald Trump's second inauguration. Her spokesperson cited scheduling conflicts for Carter's service, but insiders made it clear. Michelle has been selective about where she shows up, especially when it involves people who have publicly targeted her family. And honestly, who can blame her? On her IMO podcast, she explained that choosing what felt right for her, instead of just doing what everyone expected, was hard, but necessary. She called it the art of saying no, and said it's a muscle she's still building. And let's not forget Michelle's brutal honesty about Trump's inauguration in 2017. She admitted in her memoir that she couldn't even fake a smile during the event, saying, "I stopped even trying to smile." She also didn't hold back on her thoughts about Trump defeating Hillary Clinton, calling it a hard pill to swallow, especially for women voters. Then there was the awkward gift exchange at Trump's inauguration. Remember when Melania handed Michelle that Tiffany & Company box? Michelle's face said it all. She was scrambling, looking for someone to take it while cameras were rolling.
there was a gift exchange.
Oh,
there
yeah.
was a box given.
The Tiffany's box.
Yeah, so what was in there?
It was a lovely frame.
What was, a frame?
It was a frame.
Sweet gesture? Sure. Smooth execution? Not so much. Michelle admitted she was caught off guard.
Walks up the steps without his wife, just leaves his wife behind. He just walks up there.
Well, there's all this protocol. I mean, this is like a state visit, so they tell you that you're gonna do this, they're gonna stand here. Never before do you get this gift, so I'm sort of like, okay, what am I supposed to do with this gift? And everyone cleared out.
Barack had to step in and save the day by taking the box inside. Talk about teamwork. Former U.S. Vice President Dick Cheney, one of the most powerful and controversial figures in modern American politics, has passed away at the age of 84, died from complications of pneumonia and cardiac and vascular disease. According to his family, Cheney was surrounded by loved ones when he died, including his wife Lynn and their daughters, Liz and Mary. Cheney shared more than 6 decades of his life with Lynn Cheney, his high school sweetheart and lifelong partner. Their love story started in Casper, Wyoming, when they were just teenagers. Back then, friends saw Dick as a smart, quiet athlete with a bright future, but few could have guessed he'd one day become one of the most influential men in Washington. The two married in 1964, and from that point on, they were inseparable. Lynn wasn't just a political spouse. She was his confidant, his sounding board, and his equal. She balanced his intensity with calm and reason, standing by him through 5 heart attacks and decades of public life. In fact, when George W. Bush tapped him to help choose a running mate in 2000, nobody expected that Cheney himself would end up being the choice. And even after such a dramatic turn, he kept going, despite facing another heart attack just weeks after the election. As second lady from 2001 to 2009, Lynn Cheney took a quieter but meaningful approach to public life. She focused on education, literacy, and civic awareness, visiting schools and encouraging children to read and learn about history. She preferred to stay out of the political spotlight, but her influence was felt deeply, especially by her daughters. Liz Cheney, as many of you might know, followed in her father's footsteps, becoming a U.S. representative and one of the most outspoken voices in Republican politics. Meanwhile, Mary Cheney built her own path, becoming a respected political consultant and advocate for LGBTQ+ rights. Through it all, Lynn remained the steady heart of the Cheney family, private, thoughtful, and dedicated to her values. Even after living most of her life in the public eye, she kept her focus on family and the things that truly mattered. For most of his life, Dick Cheney was a steadfast Republican who always backed his party's nominees, until last year, when he made headlines by announcing his support for Democratic candidate Kamala Harris. After Trump's first presidency, Cheney became one of his fiercest critics, famously calling him the greatest threat to our republic and condemning his efforts to hold on to power through lies and chaos.